Here's to the crazy ones. The misfits. The rebels. The troublemakers. The round pegs in the square holes. The ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them. Because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Isn't that an awesome ad? I'm Marc Mandel. Welcome to episode number 3 of Customer Experience Unsung Heroes. Thanks for being here with me. I'm so glad you're here. Also, thank you for being such a kind supporter of me and the work that I've been doing recently with some videos and programs like this. You guys have been on this journey with me now for about 6 months as I've been out on my own producing content like this and doing some other work. And thank you for all the support you've given me. It means a lot to me. Today's a special show. Customer Experience Unsung Heroes. What is this show about? This show is about an opportunity to meet some of the folks in our industry who are doing some of the best work out there. Some of the smartest analytical guys, some of the biggest minded transformational leaders, some of the most thoughtful voice of the customer people, some of the most incredible closed loop people. Whatever their key lane is in the customer experience space, these are the guys out there like the people in that Apple ad doing the amazing work. And I use this show as an opportunity for us to meet these types of people and to give them a deserved spotlight, an opportunity to introduce themselves to you and you to them, because I think you guys deserve to meet one another. Today is exactly that. On today's episode, I've asked a good buddy of mine, Ian Gruber, to come join, and we're going to have a good conversation about a really big topic in just a second. It's all about kind of this intersection or this convergence between customer experience analytics work and AI. And what role does analytics play in AI? What role does AI play in analytics? And how do these things cooperate together in meaningful ways to help customers of ours learn more about their customers? So with that said, no further ado, I'd like to bring on Ian and ask him to join me. There he is. Hey, Ian.
Hey, Marc. Great to be here.
Thanks for being here. I was alluding to you a second ago about kind of your lane in this customer experience business, but I would love to hear it directly from you. Can you take just a minute or two and just kind of describe what you do and kind of what makes you who you are and why you're here?
Thanks. My mission is really sort of to delight customers with data insights and humanizing experiences. And when I mean that, it's internal and external customers. Currently, I'm leading operations, insights, supply chain, and experience in automated retail at Swyft. But I've had a great journey of experience across a multitude of industries from retail, technology, healthcare, really in roles leading customer experience, analysis, performance management, and really that sort of ability to drive actionable recommendations and action for customers forward.
Interesting. That's a big job. Let me get this conversation kicked off in a way that I'm hoping is a little bit provocative. I went on LinkedIn about a week or so ago, maybe 10 days ago now, and I tried to make a point in a post that I wrote. And I said, I believe this concept of dashboards as a way to convey information about our customers is going to go away the way of the dodo bird. It's going to seem silly in the future, especially with the growth of artificial intelligence and particularly generative AI. And in my opinion, I wrote in that article or that piece that I think we're going to see over the next couple of years less and less development done in dashboards and lots of charts and graphs about our customers, and more the ability just to kind of get clear answers to questions simply by asking a question and getting an answer. And I can't tell you how many people responded to that email. About half said, "You're absolutely right." The other half said, "You're absolutely not." And I wasn't sure which group was right or wrong because I don't know. I just have my own opinion. But I'm curious, I'm sure you have some thoughts about this, Ian, right off the bat. Just to be provocative, how do you see AI and business intelligence and customer insight and all these kind of worlds starting to come together? Do you have a vision, right or wrong? What do you see the future looking like?
Yeah, I mean, I think I come back to sort of my retail mindset, which is, one of the phrases in retail is you want to get the right product to the right customer at the right time. And I think of the same sort of premise with sort of information and data collection, right? You want to get the right information to the right person at the right time so they can make the right what I would call customer connection to make, actionable things happen. I think about data as sort of, if I take a step back of sort of dashboards, I think about, what is it really meant for, right? It's really the need for sort of, humans to basically be able to visualize information quickly and intuitively, right? And gain sort of key insights at a really quick glance. So, I think about that of like, even how was the inception of, this, even coming about, from past centuries, right? So if we think about the maritime, sailors, what they had sort of, again, instruments for dashboards for sort of navigation, right? Then what's actually sort of fascinating about this is the Industrial Revolution sort of took place, and they started putting in dashboards for factories, like to measure the pressure, the temperature, the output, right? And then sort of, what ended up happening is sort of, the cars had a development right at that time. And in about 1890, they started sort of putting dashboards in cars. And that term dashboard really originated from a wooden board in those carriages that sort of shielded the drivers from the mud. So all of those things sort of evolved, and, dashboards then evolved from business intelligence, then now AI, reporting, performance management, and all of those things have sort of evolved. What I think about is a couple things. So one is, I'm a huge proponent of sort of movies and influence, and I love how you sort of started with the Apple sort of, influence that it has to sort of change the world, because I think those sort of evolutions have gone on to change the world. What I think about ultimately is it will be almost like Minority Report, if you've seen that movie with Tom Cruise, where, he's playing with a dashboard, but very sort of, there's information coming from what I would call an AI generative sort of notion, where you have sort of voice transcription speech, but it's also very interactive at the same time. So my sense is that, systems will move very hybrid. There'll be systems that move in one direction, where it's sort of the Alexa, Siri, where you're sort of asking, commands on, what were my sales yesterday? But what I think it does lack is that sort of relationship standpoint, right? For example, right, if I was to say, hey, sales were up 15% yesterday, right? It gives you sort of the information at a very quick glance, but it really doesn't, convey that same depth that you might see through a chart or through sort of exploratory data analysis that you can do. So I think that's where we're sort of headed, is sort of this, very fast hybrid role, across dashboarding, where they won't go away. You'll still want to have gas gauges of performance, but I think the information availability and the root causes will become more automated. And I think you've seen that, happen across the blend, what I would say around performance management of reporting with then, what I would call marketing and sales activity that's using data to power that information. So you'll see more automated real-time things happen.
That's, by the way, let me compliment you right off the bat on the reference to Minority Report. It's definitely a favorite of mine. And he had the unfair advantage though of having the precogs to tell him what's going on, out there. So he could see the future. And in some ways, that's an interesting allegory or an interesting connection to where I want to take this conversation with you. I was thinking about, I have a book on my bookshelf over there called Competing on Analytics by Tom Davenport. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a good book. And in it, he writes a lot about the 3 levels of analytics: level 1, level 2, level 3. In level 1, he says, describe for me what happened in the past. So for me, that's a dashboard. Summarize it.
Yeah.
Level 2, he talks about predict the future. And so we're, if all things kind of trend even, where are we going? And he talks about level 3 though. And level 3 seems to be, to me, the big opportunity in AI. And that's prescriptive analytics. What do I do about it? Right? What intervention makes the most sense based on the data? Think of me as like an account team or a customer success team at a company, right? And I can imagine if I had a fully laid out playbook written for me by an AI engine that says, for this account, you need to do these 4 things. For this account, you need to do these 2 things. For this guy, leave him alone, he's fine, right? And to spell that out for me prescriptively in a way that I could just follow the steps and I don't have to even think about it. I'm just going to kind of follow the game plan the way the AI engine thought about it. And for me, that's kind of having that precog. It tells me sort of, this guy's going to commit a crime, go arrest him before he does it. Right? What are your thoughts about prediction, prescription, kind of future looking things like that? Do you see a role for that?
Oh, yeah, no, I definitely do. And I think you've sort of talked about, the 5 phases of sort of analytics, right? There's the descriptive, which is what happened, diagnosis, tell me the why, predictive, right? What might happen.
Yep.
And then prescriptive, right? What should be done. And then what I think AI will go into is sort of the cognitive analytics, right? It's sort of, how do you use sort of AI machine learning to sort of mimic that human reasoning and extract insights from complex data, but then actually now offer what I would call real-time solutions, of that. And so I think we are definitely sort of headed in that direction. What I think about a lot is, back to sort of different sort of movie references, right? I think about sort of, again, that Steve Jobs sort of quote, right? You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. Yep. So you have to trust the dots will somehow connect. So I think what that allows is there's a term called sort of homophily, right? Which is sort of birds of a feather flock together. And so how do you make those connections happen a lot faster to react to it? And I think that's where we're sort of headed, on that front.
What do you think that timeline is? Is that a year out? Is that 5 years out? What do you guess?
Yeah, I think it's here. I think it depends on sort of organizations. I think you have sort of, every industry, right, has, leaders, followers, those type of things. And so I think, again, some of the tech companies, right, are already putting those things in place. I think it's already been in place. If we think of like voice chat, some of these technologies with call centers that people are doing, I think there are activities that are going. I think it's more, how does it keep moving on sort of a central theme together? And from that sort of what I would call omni-channel, omni-organization presence, moving that forward.
Interesting. Is there an example that comes to your mind? Any company or any team that you've seen, or any brand that you've seen as just maybe an outsider being aware of them that's starting to really execute on that? Or is that still sort of out there in the future?
No, I mean, I think you see that. I mean, especially in technology kind of companies today. I would say, again, one of the main focus is sort of simplicity, right? You see a lot more sort of simplicity sort of being driven forward. I think across many industries, right, you see, especially in the retail sectors, where they're doing sort of more real-time personalization, but now actually have more of that cognitive. You see that on where you can actually now, instead of making phones and chats, you see more of that sort of prescriptive sort of survey design where they're leading you through the experience. I think what it's really about is when you're looking at companies, and you could see that in the Amazons, you could see that in a lot of sort of that, where they have the DNA of that sort of customer centricity sort of driven forward. You see those things sort of happening on that front.
Cool. I think of Amazon, in so many different ways. I have a love-hate relationship with Amazon, mostly because I spend too much money with them. I don't think a day goes by where there's not at least one Amazon package on my front doorstep. But that said, I remember it was Andrew Jassy, the CEO, said, any call to customer service is a failure. Right? He said, I think that we owe it to our customers to anticipate problems before they realize they've had them, and to use data, to your point earlier, to make it a better human experience for their customer. Right? Imagine if you're expecting that super important box to show up at the house tomorrow, and Amazon knows today that it's going to be late. Maybe they could step in, ship another one to you that's going to get there tomorrow, and pull back the first before you realize, hey, my box isn't here. Got to start trying to track it down and find out what's going on, only to find out it was a shipping delay. Right? Wouldn't it be interesting to use AI and think about things like journey orchestration to push customers certain ways, or to avoid the interaction entirely by just solving the problem before it becomes a problem?
Yep. I think you're hitting the point of getting that customer journey. I think what's happened with those dots that we talk about is organizations don't always think about each one of those dots is part of the relationship. So let's take a perfect example like survey design. They might think, okay, that is outside of the journey to sort of measure things, versus that is the interaction that a customer is actually going to. So how to stitch all of those things together, but also how do you deploy those where those are part of sort of that journey orchestration?
Interesting. I just have a couple of other things to cover with you, or to chat with you about, or to ask you. The biggest one comes to my mind. You've described a bit about your own journey at the beginning of this conversation, and it's clear you've had an important and big career so far, and it's not done yet. You're going. I, on the other hand, am trying to retire, but you, on the other hand, are keep going. And my question for you, looking back in the rearview mirror, clearly, every role that you've had, every gig that you've been part of, you learn something. You say, boy, I learned something here new that I didn't know before. I would bet you that somebody out there is listening to this conversation that's going to think, I wish I knew something that Ian now knows, that Ian found valuable. Is there any kind of sage advice, some key, like aha, the thing that comes to mind first, that most visceral thing that says, I wish I knew 3 years ago what I now know because of something that I've been through? What advice, what anecdote, what story can you tell my friends out there listening to this about that? What do you recommend?
Yeah, no, and I think it's all about the journey is, learning and continual learning and having sort of that growth mindset.
Yeah.
The biggest lessons that I think I take with me so far, and again, as you talked about, I still have a long journey ahead, hopefully, knock on wood, is really what I'd say is the power of simplicity, being customer centric, and really realizing that when you're thinking about, the journey, it is a relationship. So, I take notions of, and I love how you're called wow moments, Marc, right? Because I think what we underestimate is what those wow moments really do matter to customers. And we still think about like an NPS score. We still think about like teaching to sort of a test on that front, because measurement is really important. And I think measurement will really still continue, because people do want to have, if you go to a football game, you want to know what the score is. There's a reason why there's a scoreboard. It keeps sort of things in place and also keeps things measured. But at the same time, I think there is the notion, and one of my favorite books is The Signal and the Noise, right? How do you cut through the noise to get to the signal on that front? Yep. So that has been sort of probably one of my biggest sort of learnings is, creating simplicity, right, through measurement, driving sort of customer centricity, and then making sure that it's sort of part of the relationship and the feedback loops that are going in. I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, and especially going through like net promoter scores and different survey measurements, is usually it's sort of a point in time. So there's the wow moment that you want to capture. But how do you actually capture now the journey that's sort of continuing on that, sphere of, that customer journey, where, for instance, a lot of customers, right, might send out a survey, and then they put a net promoter score out, and then they put a resting rule, and then they do all this other work after the fact. And so they have no idea what sort of, again, that journey has sort of taken place along that notion. So that's where I really sort of think it's about that notion. I also think, and I started out with the integration of data with that humanizing experiences, right? How do you sort of overlay that together and they work in tandem and hand in hand versus in silo?
Fascinating. Last two questions for you. I want to ask you, how do people find you when they're looking for you? Because I'm sure people are going to want to come follow up and talk to you about this. And what do you do when you're not out there fixing these kind of things in the business context? What do you do for fun?
Yeah, no, great question. So first, how to contact me. I love talking about these things. I think people
we all do.
I'm also a people first kind of person. So again, on LinkedIn, you can find me. Also, my email's also on LinkedIn on that front. So, happy to sort of, again, send any contact information from that. Second, what do I do sort of for fun? I mean, again, I love sort of, solving puzzles, solving challenges. Family is important, obviously, to me, but when it's not that, I love sort of learning about different sort of, customer centricity activities that are going on. And I love actually, even as you talked about with different surveys that customers are doing, I love sort of learning and seeing what other things are sort of going on in the sort of marketplace to then take the feedback, combine that, and then see how to sort of move that forward.
Well, Ian, thank you for hanging out with me here. It's, I learn from you every time I hear you talk, and it's a gift for that to be able to learn from you. So thank you for upgrading me today. I really appreciate that. And let's just continue the conversation. And I want to encourage my friends listening in to reach out to Ian if you want to check in with him. He's, as you said, he's on LinkedIn. He's pretty visible out there. Check him out. I think you'll be pretty impressed by what Ian's about. Good guy, certainly well worth getting to know, in my opinion. I know I've enjoyed our friendship, and thank you for being a big part of my life. Guys, let's wrap up the show here, because we could sit, Ian and I, talk 5 more hours about this stuff, but I think we all have other work to do too. So thank you for hanging out with me here today, and we'll see you again soon on the next episode of the show. Take care, friends, and thank you, Ian, for being here.
Thanks so much, Marc.